This presentation is complementary to that of the essay. We're going to focus on Apple's iTunes and its effect on the UK music industry. We're going to look at who are Apple, what is iTunes, what drove Apple to target music, the effect on the UK music industry, and then finally, what is the future of the UK music industry. First up, who are Apple? Apple are an American company based in California. They were founded in 1976 by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniacki. They design and market consumer electronics and software. For example, here are some of Apple's products. You have the Apple Macintosh computer, the iPod, which is very relevant in this presentation as the iPod is used with iTunes. The fact the iPod was actually released after iTunes and has now to date sold over 300 million worldwide since 2001. We've got Logic Studio, which we touched on in the essay, complementary to Pro Tools, something that Apple obviously are taking further. The OS X operating system, iTunes itself, including the iTunes Store, and then finally one of Apple's latest products, the iPhone 4S. This is a timeline basically showing you all the products, both hardware and software, that Apple have released since its formation in 1976, with firstly releasing the Apple I computer, going right up to present day to the latest Apple product, the iPhone 4S. Now we're going to talk about what is iTunes. iTunes is a media computer program which was developed by Jeff Robin and Bill Kincaid. This was developed in 1999. It was purchased and renamed by Apple in 2000. Originally it was called SoundJam MP, and at first it was a program that could only play music. Basically, by putting a CD in, you could have the opportunity to play the CD, or you could obviously have the opportunity to upload the CD onto the computer. iTunes Store came much later. It was introduced in 2003, and here is actually a layout of iTunes, and obviously Steve Jobs introducing iTunes, specifically on the iTunes Store in 2003. And obviously you can see the layout of it, the play, kind of like a tape machine. Obviously a search bar, so you can type in an artist, which can be accessed to be used both on the iTunes Store and on your computer. And obviously some of the products that the iTunes Store actually sell, as well as the fact of using playlists and so on and so forth. What drove Apple to the music market? Now, there was a lot of controversy over Apple coming into the music market. Obviously there were a few countless lawsuits with the Beatles between 1976 right up to 2006. Obviously one of the key moments was when the Beatles' complete back catalogue was released on the iTunes Store. Apple came into the MP3 market at a time when obviously there was a lot of problems with sort of illegal downloads. You had Napster, some others came a little bit later on, Audio Galaxy, recently LimeWire and BitTorrent sites. But Apple saw a market here, and obviously by developing the iPod and iTunes, they elaborated on it and managed to actually get out the market there. The storage faculty of obviously the iPod and obviously the computer system, you could store on a hard drive on a computer, you can store thousands of songs, whereas on the iPod, the first one, which was 1 gigabyte, could store 1,000 songs. right up to the present day, where the biggest iPod now can actually 160 gig can actually store up to 40,000 songs. So storage was a big impact here, as the fact as previously a CD would hold between 12 and 15 songs, and obviously the space factor. An iPod, it was straight onto, downloaded, same as on a computer, whereas with a CD you built up and accumulated a collection of them. Apple also brought out a unique file format. It was called the AAC, which is still used today and is far better, Apple said, than the MP3. Okay, the effects this has had on the industry. Well, basically, after Napster, well, at that time I should say, at Napster, there were 6 big record companies: Warner Brothers, Universal Music Group, EMI, BMG, Sony, and Polygram. Whereas today, in 2011, there are only 3 remaining, the big 3: Sony, Warner Brothers, and Universal Music. Also the fact that today you don't need a record label to sell a product on iTunes, a song. Independent artists can upload to iTunes to sell music. This is normally done by paying a set fee, for example, to a site like TuneCore or CD Baby, and then basically the songs are uploaded on to iTunes, where they can be purchased in the UK or worldwide, as iTunes is the biggest music store online. Music can be accessed also from anywhere at any time, something that couldn't be done before. You'd have to go out and physically buy a CD, go into a shop, or when the internet started selling, obviously by buying it and waiting for it to come in on order from that way. But with this, you can access it anytime, any place, providing you have an internet signal on your computer or a 3G signal on your iPhone, or a signal on any phone, as iTunes is also compatible with PC as well. A lot of artists also support iTunes now. The iTunes Festival, which is held yearly in London, features 31 nights of live music. A lot of British acts have played: Noel Gallagher, the Manic Street Preachers, Coldplay, etc. So there's a lot of support there from UK artists for downloads. Also the fact that it's cost and waste effective. With cost, obviously with CDs you'd have to pay for so many to be produced. And waste effective, you'd have the inlays of the CDs, and obviously they take up space, whereas obviously with songs that are downloadable via iTunes onto the iPod, didn't take up any space, just fitted on that product. Big effects. Okay, so we're going to finish up now. What is the future of the UK music industry? Okay, there's been a lot of things saying lately that the end of CD production, particularly in America next year, 2012. So that's definitely something that obviously would affect the UK music industry. The fact that a lot of people still buy CDs, more so albums than singles. Also recently, Pete Townsend calling Apple digital vampires, and saying that Apple should invest into artists. So, where are Apple going to go here? Become a record company? It may involve another lawsuit with Apple Records or the Beatles, who knows? But definitely something that obviously could have a knock-on effect here as well. Also, the competition is starting to arise now, with other online music applications, software being launched. Amazon being the second, Google Music, which has lately been introduced. So what's going to happen there? How is it going to affect? Well, obviously the competition of price. iTunes range from 79p and 99p. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.